The Building Brands Marketing Podcast is dedicated to exploring the journeys of industry leaders who have successfully built a brand. Join me, Robert Breuer, president of Building Brands Marketing, and an entrepreneur who's successfully scaled multiple brands as we dive deep into the strategies, challenges, and insights that have shaped the success of industry leaders and provide you with the resources you need to do the same. Building Brands Marketing is a full-service marketing agency specializing in crafting customized marketing strategies for service-based businesses with a creative powerhouse to drive real results. Welcome to the Building Brands Podcast. Welcome to the Legal Leaders series of the Building Brands Podcast. I'm very excited today to welcome Bridget Truxillo, owner and attorney with Lady Law Shield. Hey, Bridget, welcome.
Hey, thanks. I'm glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So let's kick things off. Tell us a little bit about the Lady Law Shield law firm, what it does, who you serve, and what inspired you to start it, Bridget.
Lady Law Shield Law Firm is a law firm that specializes in helping law enforcement officers and first responders primarily fight back against employment-related issues that they're having work, meaning that you're fighting back when you feel like your agency's trying to throw you under the bus for some reason. And I do that for such a specific crowd because I'm former law enforcement. I felt like I was being thrown under the bus, and after many years of being an attorney, realized that all I really wanted to do was help cops. So left the law firm world to specialize doing just this about 4 years ago. And I help cops across the country try and solve these problems.
Yeah, I thought it was fascinating when we talked prior to the episode and learning this kind of niche, which, you know, is rare. I haven't talked to an attorney that served this exact segment of the legal industry before. So talk to me a little bit about what led you to transition from law enforcement to law, and how did your experience in SWAT influence the creation of your niche practice?
Well, yeah. So, I was on SWAT team. When I started law enforcement, I did patrol like everybody. But within a year, I want to say everybody, if you're not familiar with law enforcement, you almost always start just in patrol as a rookie. And then within a year, I went to the undercover narcotics unit. And then about 3 months after that, I also started on the SWAT team. So I was the only female member of the SWAT team, which would have all of the issues you would expect. It wasn't blatant. I didn't get physically assaulted in any way, but the longer I was there, the more fed up I got with how just being a female in a unit like that comes with the challenges you would expect. And I had a lot of overlap with the people on the SWAT team that were also on the undercover narcotics team. My SWAT team commander was my lieutenant in the narcotics unit, which, if you know the structure of law enforcement, it's like me and then sergeant and lieutenant. So I really couldn't get away from it. And it was just horrible all around. And after being written up and on probation and 500 mountain climbers for 2.5 years, I finally just decided to give them all the middle finger and leave, which was a really, really hard decision because I thought I'd be in law enforcement in some level of federal or something, which was what my goal was for my professional career. So when I left that, I really didn't know what to do and went to law school and also moved to Texas from Florida for my now husband. And so I got a job, and then I had kids and I had a job, and then I did not like the law firm life. I do not like working for bad supervisors, and decided that I needed to just work for myself and do what I knew I wanted to do, which is to help. I want to be able to help me back then. And so I do it for the cops now in the way that I know that they need.
Yeah, Bridget, I know in speaking with you, it's very obvious to me there's a very personal attachment to what you do today. So talk to me, how do you think that your background gives you a unique advantage when representing clients facing similar situations and internal department issues today?
Well, primarily is that if you've never been a cop, you just don't understand the world. It's certainly easy to sit on the outside, and thank you to all the people out there, including me, who are very much a supporter of law enforcement and what they do. But truly, if you've never lived it walked in those shoes and been on those scenes and seen what the world is really like from that side of the fence, or from that lens, you just don't understand it. And we all know that law enforcement officers face hard things every day anyway, that the murder, the mayhem, the evil. I mean, you call 911 and you show up to somebody's house because they called you. I mean, the number of times that I would show, like when I was in uniform, which obviously wasn't that long, but I would show up in uniform because you call 911 and they open the door and like just cussing and spitting at us from the second they see us. And I'm like, hold on a second, you called me. What can I do for you? And so that, it's in and of itself, it takes a very significant mental health toll on a person, that you have to, if you're not doing something every day to fight back against that battle, that it starts to whittle away at who you are. You don't come out of law enforcement the same person you were going in. And then if you throw on top of it that you then start to feel like your law enforcement agency or fire department or whatever, because first responders deal with all the same horrible, evil craziness. Mm-hmm. If you start to feel like your department's coming after you on top of all of that, having lived it firsthand, I know that you can't think of anything else. You can't do anything else. It's all you eat, breathe. And then sadly, it does force people. I never got into that disposition, but it does force people into thinking, well, I must be the problem. I can remove myself by committing suicide to solve this problem. And so I really come at this from knowing what the job is, what the job does to you, and knowing that it can push you too far down the slippery slope of suicide. And I come at it not just as an attorney, yes, you can pay me, and yes, I can write your legal documents, but because I want to help improve your mental health. And the cops I talk to, and as I get the word out there, is that they know and they trust that because I've had the experiences of being a cop, I'm like almost no other attorneys out there. And so it really does separate me. It gives me a trust factor that, because cops don't trust people anyway, they're very, very cynical bunch. And it gives me that sort of a leg up that, and because I believe that they trust that if you come to me, I'm not going to say, oh yeah, let's go file your lawsuit. I say, okay, let's start to make your life better and solve this problem in some way. And sometimes that's not a lawsuit. Sometimes I talk you out of that and into what you need instead. Sometimes that's just getting a different job. But I help support you through that because I've been through all of it. And I definitely have a unique perspective as an attorney to be able to help in that very specific way.
Yeah, it's that professional gratification. And I find this so often with service-based business owners. One of the major reasons they went into business for themselves in many instances was they loved what they did in most instances, but they sought another level of personal and professional gratification, and they wanted to do things a certain way or serve a certain gap that wasn't necessarily served in that industry. Yeah, I find it fascinating. I'm going to take a step back for a second, Bridget, and kind of look at the early days of the firm. When did you start the firm again?
I think it'll be 5 years this summer.
Congratulations. 5 years is a big milestone. That's a tough one for some entrepreneurs, but it's a big milestone. So talk to me, what were some of the largest challenges, especially early on in those early days in building your brand, and how did you overcome them?
Social media. I don't want to say that I hate it, but I will say that the learning what the whole thing was when 5 years ago, and then about a year, I think it was a year or two, I think it was on a year later, I decided I needed help. I hired somebody and she put together, and it's tough to want to spend that money. Oh, I can watch a video, or I'm gonna go to YouTube or find something that I can learn it on my own. Like, nope, it's like trying to figure out my own taxes. Like, just makes me want to throw up. Literally, if like the idea of trying to figure out social media made me want to throw up and then stick my head in the sand and just hide from it. Backing up from that is I signed up for a marketing program, which I will not name, but it was really expensive. They way oversold their promises. I kept telling them, like 2 years in, like, this is not what you promised, not what you promised. I mean, to the point where I said, if you don't start, like, let me talk to the owner. They wouldn't let me talk to him. I said, fine, I'm contesting it. So I'm all the way to I contested it with my credit card 2 years later and proved to them how I tried and tried and tried, and they failed on their, and I got all my money back, thank goodness. But And then also then I was very leery of that, like trusting somebody to follow through on what they say they're going to spend. But I ended up, a lady in person at a co-working space, so I got to meet her, not just some like, I promise you online I'll do these things for you,
Mm-hmm.
and that helped a lot. And then it's what you do. So I know you know it is, that is the hardest parts. Not I say it's easier now because I we're consistent about it, and I've been able to get some people around it that help me do it. I don't do it all by myself. It's not the best use of my time, but it's still hard to spend the money on something like that when I'm still not making as much as I would love to make as a company. But you got to spend some money to make some money, and sometimes you make mistakes on that, uh, and try and move past the mistakes and move forward with the positives as you go.
Yeah, it's unfortunately a story I've heard many times, right?
Mhm.
I call it getting burned. They've gotten burned by the in the basement agencies. One of the largest challenges with the marketing industry, Bridget, and I've actually talked with certain people within the industry about trying to create a change in this area, but it's unregulated and unlicensed. You see, it's not like law where you have bar oversight and things like that. It's completely unregulated. Anybody can get into the marketing agency industry, and say, there's people like me that have a degree in it, went to college for it, but there's also people that maybe just came up around social media and they could say they're a social media expert because they've consumed it for many years. And
Mhm.
I'm not saying they're not, but my point is that because of that lack of licensing and regulation, it's very easy for a lot of people to get into the space. And then it causes, people that might be more kind of fly by night companies and things like that, to build a market share in the space. And it's dangerous, because then what happens is it deteriorates trust. When people have been in relationships where their trust has been broken, fragmented, or taken advantage of, then
Mhm.
they become a lot more hesitant in the future to make those commitments. What I find in those uh, areas, it's just like law, and there's so much importance of setting expectations at the
Mhm.
beginning of the client and business relationship, and
Mhm.
setting proper expectations. And when the client sometimes has lofty expectations, I've heard this with attorneys all the time, where a client comes to them and says, the first thing a lawyer typically asks is, "What's your goal here? What's your objective? What's your ideal in game here?" And they tell them that, and they go, "Well, hate to tell you this, but you don't have a case here, or we this is going to be more difficult than you probably anticipate based on the
Mhm.
facts you're giving me." It's the
Mhm.
same thing the other way around. Hey, setting clear expectations, coming back to the table and going, "Hey, your expectations are not achievable at this budget, or maybe in this timeline, so on and so forth." And that's, I think, the critical piece. And I think, in general, not all marketing strategies always are going to work, right? And obviously, you've had some marketing relationships with vendors that haven't worked out.
Yeah.
But the one bright side, maybe not in that instance, but in many scenarios with marketing strategies that fail, is you learn something from it to change for the future.
Yeah.
And I look at that like a win still. I've done things, marketing efforts for our own organization that I wouldn't consider a success, but I learned something from it to not repeat the same mistake in the future,
Mhm.
or do something slightly different. What are some of the largest lessons you've learned in promoting your firm from some of the marketing strategies that failed?
Well, one is don't spend $5,000 when you don't have a clear path for your business yet. And
Solid
I'd say
advice.
because I started 5 years ago, but then I've whittled that down. Oh, no, I niched more. I'm not niched more. I'm very niched. I became much through that experience, and I learned from it. I learned how to do a pitch to somebody. I've grown my business. I want to help cops across the country. I learned that there's a way to get my message out there, reach out to strangers. What's the best way to do that? How can you make it like, don't do a copy paste thing. I mean, just yesterday, last week, somebody pitched me, oh, my team found you on LinkedIn and we think that your experience is so great and we think you should pay us to do X. I completely ignore it, or I respond back and say, oh, great. What about my experience did you like? Like, cause no, this is copy paste crap. And if you want my attention and for sure my money, then you like, what specifically do you like? So, and then he gave me said, thank you for responding. Sign up here and I'll explain to you how we can help. And I responded back saying, no, I would like for you to tell me what about my experience, because this is some copy paste crap. So I did learn through, I will not spend that much money on a thing. I learned how to reach out in a way that I didn't know how to do that before, how to craft my message more. I had people say no to me, or ignore me. And then, but what I learned through that is, and also I think it's my personality, is that I'm not afraid to do something hard or to try something new. I'm a firm believer that it's never too late. And I would email people back and say, hey, I get it, you're not interested, but would you mind sharing with me why? Can I have just 1 to 2 minutes of your time? And either they would book a call with me and talk to me about either, oh no, I do want to talk to you. Let's get on a podcast together. Because for a while, I focused on getting on other people's podcasts within my
Mm-hmm.
niche to share what I do and how I can help. And then, or if they said no, I would say not many people said no, and here's why. They just would ignore me. But I learned that you'll get a lot of people that ignore you, and that's fine. Or just to keep following up, or that just because somebody is not responding to you right now doesn't mean that they won't. I mean, I just booked speaking at a conference. I started networking with these people 3 years ago, and it's a really big
Mm-hmm.
deal to me that now I have more name recognition, brand recognition, and that really, really knowing this is not a sprint. This is a marathon, that I've been cultivating relationships with people for 3 years, volunteered my time with this conference when they were in my town 3 years ago, and they met some people and like, oh yeah, I know Bridget. She knows what she's talking about. Like, hey, well, you've never met my client. How do you really know that I know what I'm talking about? But also going back is that they trust that I'm an insider in my industry and know what it's like, from a law enforcement perspective. So I've spent money on programs that didn't work, but then I learned what I don't want out of that. Or I've spent money on, with time at conferences that didn't get an ROI on it, and I won't do it again. But you don't know that unless you do it. I spent a lot of money on a program, my client management program, maybe a couple years ago now. And now I'm not really sure that was the best route to go, but I mean, I'm certainly not going to spend the time and money to fix it right, to change it, because I don't need to right now. It's just, but there's no other way to do business, without doing that. And there's been plenty of times when I can sit on the foot of my bed, and I also have 3 kids, and my kids are important to me, and I'm very strict about. Somebody asked me not too long ago, a girl, an attorney out of California who's thinking about having kids, and she said, how do you balance it all? And I'll say, honestly, there's a lot of times that I don't know if I'm balancing all, but what I have learned is that I am very rigid with my time. I have work
Mm-hmm.
time, I have parent time, I have me time. There is very few things I'm rigid about when I do exercise, because otherwise I'm a lunatic B-word person. But there's plenty of times I sit at the foot of my bed with tears in my eyes thinking, gosh, why am I doing this? But I believe strongly in what I do. And I think that's very important to make it through the long haul. Is I'm doing this because I for the first time in my professional life, okay, I believe that what I did as a cop mattered. And now as an attorney, I think it's very hard as an attorney to believe that what you do matters, but I wholeheartedly believe that what I do matters. So whether I get 1 client this month or 20 clients this month, I know that I'm helping and I'm impacting those people's lives, and that matters to me. So I will fit it in the hours that I have it, but the mistakes are that you just got to let it go. I mean, water off a
Yeah,
duck's back and keep going.
definitely. There's some really valuable statements in there that I want to unravel really
Yeah.
quickly.
Yep.
First of all, is confidence. For a lot of service based businesses, confidence is at least half of it. And I don't mean false confidence, genuine confidence, not the fake it till you make it type of thing, but the genuine confidence of having the experience, having the purpose, having the right mission. And that will allow you to jump into situations and be trusted, which is the
Mhm.
second thing we'll talk about in just a second. But B, also, it's going to allow you to jump into situations and know, hey, I can take this on when something new comes about,
Mhm.
or an unknown, things of that nature. And it also will feed to the people around you. The energy can feed.
Mhm.
Now, the second part of this is trust and consideration, which for me is the most important segment of the marketing funnel for lawyers, particularly professionals in general, lawyers, doctors, even home services. It really the trust and consideration is the most critical part of the funnel. And you talked about that long sales pipeline of, hey, someone from 3 years ago that you met now reaching out. That's happened in my industry as well. I've had clients that we spoke to 5 or 6 years ago. We actually had one just recently last week that I pitched almost 6 years ago that came back and decided they're ready to get going. And that is an extremely long sales cycle. Well, this is not the same in all areas of law. It's slightly different from subspecialty to subspecialty. You know, criminal, for example, people are going to act on an instinct when they need a criminal,
Yes.
representation. But with our industry, the average person that fills out a consultation request on our website, the first person went twice to our website. The second most common person in terms of an attribution report goes to our website 32 times before they fill out a consultation request.
Wow.
So in the middle of that pipeline, there is a whole trust and consideration segment that has to take place. And it's the same with lawyers. And this is where the podcasts, the social media opportunities, all of these speaking opportunities are additional areas of opportunity to establish more trust and consideration for your prospective clients that may still not even need your services.
Right.
But you're continuing to build trust and consideration for the day that they need it, or they might need it, and they've gone another route. This has happened several times to us where someone went with another agency and then they had a kind of a war story like you. And 2 years later, they came back and said, hey, we went the other route and, we hung on for 2 years and it just didn't work. And, so can we, talk now about rectifying this, so on and so forth. Right. And I think that is because of all the trust and consideration groundwork that has been laid in that time frame. And that's why I'm such a big believer in service-based businesses, in things like this podcast, are not only additional opportunities to build your trust and expertise, but learn a lot of additional components about your industry or things related to your industry. So that way you can continue to genuinely become more confident because you're gaining more knowledge. It is an evolution of constant knowledge gaining. When I graduated with my degree in concentration in marketing in 2014, you fast forward to 2025 today, so much has happened in the past decade that I've learned and had to develop that did not even exist, or let alone was not taught in formal college education structure back in that time. And so it's a constant evolution. And so you have to take the time to develop that, because it's so easy in service-based businesses, especially law firms, to go, I'm in the weeds, I'm caught up, and I have so much work in front of me every day. I don't have time to take a step back and do some of this professional development, spend some me time at the gym to take care of my health and my exercise so I can approach my work in the right manner, to have some family time. It's easy to get caught up on that. And those three things, the confidence, the professional trust and consideration, and then also finding a balance so you can be on your A game at all times, are super critical to the success of service-based businesses. I think those are valuable points. But Bridget, kind of going another direction for a second, you offer legal consulting all across the country. And I find that interesting because not only are you in a narrow niche, but personality types, cultures, everything are very different from region to region. So how do you ensure consistency in your brand and messaging while maintaining a personal touch with your clients all across the country?
That's a good question. And I think it comes back to our earlier, it comes back to one of our original questions, which is that I do something very specific, and I've spent a lot of time building that trust and sharing just over and over and over, and getting them to understand, like, first and foremost, I'm doing this for you, because I believe in what this can do for you mentally, and how it'll improve your life. It'll improve your wife's life, or your spouse. And I do that. That's my first, like, I always start with, I'm doing this because I want you to be able to have a happier life. I want you to stay on the job. And so I'm very consistent about that. I can do it nationwide because it's based on federal law, not state law. As the EEOC, Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, it's based on federal statutes. And I'm very clear with my clients that, look, the consultation that I offer from the get-go is not me filing anything for you. I'm not filing an EEOC claim for you. I'm not mailing a letter to your department acting on your behalf as an attorney. I'm going to review everything that's gone in your life. And because when I left the sheriff's office, I felt completely alone, that nobody understood me at all. and I had no idea who to turn to. I didn't trust anybody. I was in a
Mm-hmm.
union. I didn't trust my own union rep to go to. It was like any other women at the department. I thought surely they're seeing what I'm going through, and how come nobody's reaching out to me to help? And I just felt so totally alone and lost. And so everything I do from the get-go is, somebody said, what do you want your law firm to? Because I did a lot of, like, I want to help cops in their mental health, but I want to be a lawyer. How can I do both? And I don't want to do trial. I hate trial, but everything, like, I know how trial works because I've been in that industry since 2008. And so, but how can I create that to where I can help to improve their mental health, but provide a legal service? Because I'm not their mental health coach. I'm not in their employee assistance program. I don't have that certification, but I do have a legal certification. And so combining that is, I realized, somebody said, well, what do you want to do? I said, I want to be able to help me and that girl back then. And so, in that one, I remember exactly where I was walking around this park with a friend, and I remember exactly where we were in the park when I said that. And like, hey, everything I'm going to do starts with that. And I'm very consistent about saying, look, this all starts with, send me everything you have, send me your own personal statement. I'm going to review everything. And then you and I would sit down and have a whole conversation around, here's what I see, here's what we need. And then what do you want out of this? Is like you say, that's very important for attorneys to
Mm-hmm.
say, what do you want out of this? Because if you're like, screw them all, I want to burn the building down. I'm like, okay, well, I'm not a criminal lawyer, so I can't help you with that. And I advise you against it. And then that's the first, like, I don't do anything without doing that. And then if you're in a state where then I file your EEOC and claim for you, I can do all that. But every single case is, I consistently build upon that first step, and I do call it a consultation service. And then after that, if you
Mm-hmm.
choose to hire me, maybe we start with that. Sometimes I'm like, no, let's start with the consultation. And then if you need to hire me after that, but sometimes I say, oh no, your problem's so bad. I need to file for you right now. But it still always starts with that. Um, and because I was very clear about what I wanted my firm to look like, and I have the benefit, and I'll say this, I'm 49 years old. I'll be 50 in June. So I've been around the block a time or two. And when you come back to confidence, I am very much, when I was at the sheriff's office and, got undercover narcotics within a year and SWAT team within a year and a half, there is something to be said for experience. Was that
Mm-hmm.
harder for me because I went into both of those things right away? Yes, it was definitely harder. Now, could you have told me otherwise back then? Heck no. I would have done it anyway, because that's my personality. And like I say, I'm not afraid of hard. But what I know now is that leaving a job where I was making great money into something where I knew I was not going to be making great money, that I needed to do the work to be very clear on what I was offering, and did enough of those crappy courses to know that you have to be very clear on your message, or
Mm-hmm.
you're never going to stand out. And so I know, like, am I the best trial lawyer? No, but I know the best trial lawyers. And I know, again, like, you partner with the right people. I don't file my taxes. I partner with a good accountant.
Mm-hmm.
I don't take great photographs. I hire a photographer. So I partner with the really great people, but nobody is as good as me on the front end of what I do and for who I do it for, because I really am doing it for the right now. Obviously, I'm a for-profit business. Yes, you got to pay me for my time. I'm not a nonprofit. I'm not getting grants or anything like that. So that's a very long way of saying that. Um, I've done the work, and I've been able to put together a package of something that I know services a specific group of people. Also, it means that I do have to reach a much broader geographical base, because while I live in Houston, Texas, and there's thousands of cops around me, you don't always need an attorney. And so I need to reach more people. And that makes the job as a business owner, is that I do want to make sure that I am consistently reaching out on a nationwide basis. And I've had clients, I've spoken to people in Hawaii, Alaska, West Coast, East Coast. I mean, there's some states, if I looked at a map, I could tell you which ones I haven't talked to yet, but I'm covering the US base. I've done podcasts for law enforcement groups in Canada, Australia. And so the culture is the same. Because my number one goal is, if you need help, I want you to ask for it. Please ask for it. Because again, I don't want anybody to commit suicide over something like this, because there are people out there that want to help. So that's a very long-winded way of saying this is how I stay consistent and get the message out there.
Well, the thing is, Bridget, they don't say the riches are in the niches for no reason. Okay, you find your niche, you drive into that niche and become just, even better at that particular niche. Well, a couple of positive results come from that. A, it raises your value. People will pay a little bit more because they know you specialize in that niche.
Mm-hmm.
B, it usually raises the client experience because you have a level of engagement, especially in your case, because you have that personal story of, hey, I've been in your shoes on the other side of the desk before, you know, it provides a better client experience, and so I think in your case, you've made a really wise decision of, hey, really, really siloing in on that target audience
Mm-hmm.
and just completely doubling down on that audience. You look at a firm like ourselves, we work primarily in the law space with Texas and Florida based law firms.
Mm-hmm.
Well, they may be willing to pay a little bit more than any other agency if they're a Texas or Florida based law firm because they know, oh, you have experience with the bar requirements of this specific state. That's a big liability for me. So hey, I'm willing to, it gives us a little bit more value prop. And
Mm-hmm.
so I think in your case, you've done well, kind of really just picking a niche, driving into it full force, and it comes off very authentic, which is a big part of branding as well. So tell us, this has been great, Bridget. Where can we find you online?
My website, ladylawshield.com. It's where I find all things. If you need to book a call with me, that's the link at the top. If you want to know where we are on social media, it's on the website. I highly recommend people, if you think this would be, or I will say this, I describe my newsletter as tactical employment law training. And when I say tactical, I mean, because cops are, or in like paramilitary world, you train and you train and you train like in your firearms or your defensive tactics or your driving, so that when you have this, the proverbial poop hits the fan and you got to act without thinking, that your body and your brain automatically right now, if I was on the SWAT team, we would practice cleaning our guns and putting them back together over and over and over, so that if we're in a gunfight and my gun jams, I know how to fix it right away without even thinking about it. And my goal is that if you're following my newsletter, I want you to read these little tidbits all the time, so that if this happens to you, you automatically, one, identify it, and two, do something about it. Because otherwise you get on that slippery slope. So I say, why would you sign up? People are like, I don't want another email. I get too many emails. Like, well, okay, great. Then this is your tactical employment law training, so that if you ever need somebody like me, you know how to stand up for yourself right away. So yeah, my website is ladylawshield.com. You can book a call with me. You can sign up for the newsletter, but I drive everybody to that site. Certainly I do a lot of posts a lot. I make some quick little videos for, helpful information, multiple social media channels. So choose your favorite flavor on the website and you can follow along.
Awesome. LadyLawShield.com. Bridget, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on the show. If you enjoyed this, like, share, and subscribe to the Building Brands podcast. Bridget, enjoyed it. Talk to you soon. Thank you.
Robert.